The all-new 911 Carrera T, and no, T does not stand for testosterone, it stands for touring. And Mark and I are out here in Southern California on Angeles Crest Highway for the Carrera T launch event. Look, at this point, I understand there are about 1 million different 911 trim levels, and you essentially need a degree from Porsche to decipher what any of this means. So what the Carrera T is essentially their value model in their lineup. It takes some of the performance bits found on the Carrera S and GTS and pairs it with their entry-level Carrera powertrain. So this is the 98A2 Evo 3-liter engine that makes in the high 300 horsepower range. It now gets either mechanical limited slip differential, or PTV, when you pair it with a manual gearbox, or their EDIF if you option this thing with the PDK. It is also the lightest Carrera you can currently buy, largely due to the manual gearbox and the as standard lightweight package which you prior got in the GTS. Essentially you get lighter weight glass, less sound deadening, and a back seat delete. From a suspension perspective, it takes the Carrera S PASM Sport suspension and pairs it with this vehicle, and unlike in a base Carrera, you can get optional rear steer. The other thing to talk about is brakes. Because this is built on the base Carrera, you get these smaller brakes, which if you're going to track this car might be a problem. Exterior-wise, it's standard 992. Yes, you have some unique trim pieces and unique colors in the Carrera T badging, but this looks like a standard 911, which is a good thing. I think the car will age pretty well, but again, that is entirely subjective. From an interior perspective, this is standard 992, other than the lightweight package, which I talked about a little earlier, and the Sport Chrono as standard. There isn't a whole lot different. You can option this out. The car comes standard with Sport Plus seats or sports seats. And unlike the Carrera S or base Carrera, you can also get optional carbon buckets, which are a polarizing seat to say the least. All of this comes in at a base price of $116,000 and change. And while optioned, this car is about $130,000. Past that though, it's pretty standard 911 in here, so it's time for Mark and I to go take this for a quick drive. Mark, we've already talked about the technical, and we've driven nearly every 911 on the planet. We're out here in Angeles Crest, Mark.
This looks like Illinois to me.
Lots of canyons in Illinois. So what do you think of the car? You've driven it up here. This is really my first time behind the wheel. How does it feel?
You know me, dude. All these cars run together after a while. I mean, all the 911 variants. What I will say is the 992 generation is by far one of the best 911s ever made from a performance perspective. They're all incredibly fast. This included, it's more horsepower than almost anybody needs. And you have a manual option. It's lighter weight. You definitely feel a little bit of nimbleness, and that could be because of the rear wheel steering. I would say everybody should get that option. It's just such an incredibly capable car, and there's almost nothing to complain about, Jack. I mean, what is there that you could possibly say about this that you haven't said about like the Carrera S and all that?
I think out here in the canyons, I definitely noticed the longer gears. By where we are, all the straight, long roads, and even our farm road has really long straights where you can wind the gears out. Yeah. Here in the canyons, you're constantly between third and second.
Yeah.
While I don't think I would get a PDK in this car because it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
I can see why people complain about the gearing element of this vehicle. The drivetrain, yes, this is the least powerful version of the Carrera 3-liter, but who cares? There's so much power. There's so much torque.
Dude, this thing's so fast, man. Like, I think that's where we're at. We were just joking around with like Misha and these guys about the S2000.
Yeah.
You know, 15 years ago, you're like, it was kind of not fast. And then now it's really slow because it has no torque. All these modern cars are so fast because, dude, it's like double the amount of horsepower that all the old cars made. They're just flying. You just can't get a slow car in this generation.
The one thing I will say, and we said this about the 992 when we first drove it, even though this is a turbocharged engine, it does build power linearly, and the torque doesn't upset the chassis. Not once out here did I feel like I was going to lose the back end, or was it really going to rotate at all under like big gobs of torque.
No, it's a safe feeling car. The manual is easy to operate. It's a good like car if you're really into cars but don't want to feel like you know, you're overwhelmed by it, you can keep this at second or third and tear this road up without any stress. It feels hyper stable. The stability control system is some of the most advanced on the planet without interfering with your driving experience. The rev matching feature works. I mean, it's just like idiot proof. I mean, it really is an idiot proof car, and it still it makes you feel like you're engaged with the driving part of it.
And the base Carrera brakes, while I'm sure they will not hold up to extended lapping, if you are just going to drive on a back road or use this as sort of your everyday car, you don't really notice the lack of the bigger brakes from either the GTS that we drove just recently or the Carrera S.
I'm sure you could overwhelm them out here. If you're going balls to the wall, after a while you probably, you know, fade them a little bit. But I mean, if you're being responsible, this is so much car, and to be fair, it better be for the price point. It's still an ass load of money. Yeah, but I mean, your argument to me is like,
as we run over a cougar,
lion.
Or yeah, mountain lion.
I don't even know what, some cat. Oh, that looks like my cat. How did it get loose? It just, there's nothing else that's really gives you this experience, even though this is expensive. Like, I know you're talking about Z8, Z06 pricing, kind of definitely encroaching on this. But
this is a vastly more connected experience than even the C8, Z06. I bought my C8, Z06 because I was going to drive on a track ride. I'm a track rat. I'm going to take my car to the track. I don't have canyons to drive.
Yeah.
But if you do, if you have great roads, this car out here is way more fun. At least to me. And you don't have fake engine noise.
Yeah.
This is a connected, or as connected as you can in this era driving experience.
It feels like it does. It sounds in a way naturally aspirated. I think it goes to show you that obviously this is a very almost boutique brand, right? Very focused on what they're doing, and they have the time, money, and energy and budget to make these changes over the course of, like, you know, a long period of time. So they've, and one of the things I said about the Z8 Z06, right, or C8 Z06, is that car doesn't feel like it's completely sorted out everywhere. In like the 911s, like they know about induction, they've figured out suspension, they've figured out damping, they figured out brakes. Like, everything is so sorted out here. It's the most complete sports car pretty much on the market, I'll be honest. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, the more I drive these cars, and I know we're beating a dead horse, but not only do I think these cars are probably the most well thought out, there's nothing else, even at this price point anymore, that offers you a 3-pedal experience that has this level of performance, like the GT500, the C8 Z06, all the Ferrari piles, the Audi R8, the McLarens. They're all auto only, and if you want to be able to heel toe yourself, row a gearbox, go fast, have a well thought out experience that checks every box from an enthusiast perspective, other than the fact that, yes, it is just a 911, this is it.
Well, you know, there's other sports cars, and you could make the argument that other sports cars might have more emotion in certain aspects of the driving experience. You know, like, you know, the C8 Z06, it has the engine over this, of course.
Yep.
You know, you might get to some of the cheaper cars where they have some styling, uniqueness to visual styling that's unique to that car, but all those cars always have some, like, inherent negative trait. Like, the engine doesn't make enough power, the transmission's average, the damping is
They're
too
not
rough.
reliable.
Yeah, in this car, that's why it's frustrating to drive these in some ways, because you want to offer some level of, like, what could they do different besides the price, honestly. And there's just not much they haven't figured out, and that's the magic of this car. And I mean, I'm just gonna leave it at that, Jack.
Yeah, Mark, if you're looking at a Carrera and the dealer isn't gonna bend you over to get a Carrera T because it is some special Porsche model, this is sort of the one to get, because honestly, the experience in the GTS that we just drove, or the Carrera S, and despite making more power and having bigger brakes, doesn't really offer a whole lot more or over this. This is sort of, I hate to say the sweet spot because Jacob and Neri are going to freak out, but sort of the sweet spot of the 911 lineup now.
I don't even know how many 911s there are, dude. I can't keep track. They're all just good, so just buy them all. Just buy every iteration. You know, why not?
Right.
We all have like an extra $1 million laying around to get every one.
Perfect. All right, let's head into the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the 911 Carrera T. One of the biggest selling points of this car is that it is 100 pounds lighter than a regular 911. And I'm gonna be honest, out here, at least with Mark in the passenger seat, driving it in a vacuum in these canyon roads, I did not notice the loss of 100 pounds. What I will tell you, it is the best value in the 911 lineup. This car starts at $116,000 and trickles down the important bits from more expensive 911s into the base Carrera, which makes it a relative value, assuming the dealers don't bend you over. And at $130,000, around that is tested, it's actually a pretty good value in the 911 realm of things. You get a diff, you get PASM Sport suspension, you get optional rear steer, and you get the important parts of driving, a good gearbox, the 992 chassis, and a very, very good drivetrain with no fake engine noise. And what Porsche does well is they have refined the 911 process to the point, or driving experience to the point, where nothing is objectionable. So what about the lack of big brakes from the Carrera S and GTS and the lack of additional power? Do I notice that? Well, when it comes to the brakes out here in the canyons, I had zero fade, at least in my driving experience. I'm sure on track that is probably a different story, so this car might require some different pads or a big brake kit. When it comes to power, in the real world, you don't notice it. This car is so freaking fast to begin with. The additional 100 extra horsepower is essentially lost on you, at least out here in the canyons. Maybe on the track, that's a different story. But to me, as a car that I would actually want to own and live with, this is probably one of my favorite 911s right now. Again, due to the price. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon.